And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Cressa Maeve Beer. She is an animator, filmmaker, and editor who's known for her fantastic stop-motion shorts Coming Out, Me and the Matrix, Clever Girl, How to Train Your Dinosaurs, and so much more. Welcome to the show!
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for that lovely intro.
We're so excited to have you and talk about your stop motion because Mary Beth mentioned this before we recorded, but I recently went to go see Jurassic World and I was like, and before that I went to go see The Matrix and I was like, so it's like, it's so cool to see your shit in front of like the Alamo movies. It makes me so happy.
Thank you so much. It makes me happy too. I love working with them. They're really solid folks. And I like that I've managed to, through them, like cling or insert myself into all of these like childhood loves. Like Godzilla, The Matrix, and now Jurassic World.
Oh, perfect. So perfect. But okay, before we do talk about your creative stuff, let's take it back to the very beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
Okay, so I got introduced to horror in the way I got introduced to everything that I love now, which was my dad. He was a huge, I would say movie junkie, but he was a huge art junkie of any kind. Like, he loved everything, and he loved every kind of everything. So when it came to movies, like, he would show me like La Strada and Mothra in like the same day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he would be like, there's stuff to appreciate about everything, which is, I think, the greatest lesson he ever taught me. And when it came to horror, when I was little, he got me super into like Universal horror movies and B movies, I guess you could call them. And Ed Wood was a big one in our house.
That's amazing that he's introducing you to La Strada and then Ed Wood is a big one in the house. Like, that's range right there, right?
Multitudes. It's important to have multitudes. That's why, like, whenever I talk to someone about movies too, like, there's always that moment of just like, oh, what were your favorite movies this year? It's just like, well, I really love Titan, but I also watched Twilight like 8 times. So like,
that's the best kind of film lover, in my opinion, though. Like, we love like good shit, but we also really love shit that's not good, but we appreciate it for what it is. Mm-hmm. Like, that's, I feel like, how you know someone really like appreciates movies. In my opinion, you enjoy some of the trash.
You
Stay Alive is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It's a terrible movie, but Stay Alive is also fucking incredible. So anyway.
Wait, Stay Alive, the sequel to which one is Stay Alive?
No, it's like the video game. It was the video game one. It's like from 2006.
Oh,
he plays
I'm
a video
thinking
game.
of Staying Alive, the John Travolta sequel to
Oh.
And I was just like, is that a horror movie? Because I've never seen it. I wouldn't be surprised if it just had this like twist halfway through. And I'm just like, is it like secretly brilliant?
No, this one's about...
watch this after the recording.
Sorry, I'm very tired. There's going to be a lot of this.
Yeah, no, this is the terrible video game kills you in the game you die in real life, featuring Frankie Muniz and goth Sophia Bush.
Oh, Frankie Muniz! I forgot
goth
he was
Sophia
in
Bush.
that.
Holy shit! Okay, I'm gonna open a tab for this.
Yeah, that awakened quite a few things in my young horror-loving heart.
I can imagine
all of the hot goth chicks in early 2000s slasher movies. We're getting off topic. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Are we though? Because that is a topic I do want to go to, of just like queer blossoming happening of just like when you're watching the horror movie and it's just like, hey, who's she?
Yeah. Yeah. I had that before I even had words for it back in like the 80s when I was watching Dream Master. And I'm like, I don't know why, but Alice's brother and Alice's boyfriend are really doing something. What is this? So, yeah.
Oh, what was it for me? Like The Faculty. And it's just like, wow, isn't Josh Hartnett so dreamy? I'm just like, no. Clea Duvall.
Clea. That movie did her dirty, in my opinion.
It really did, especially because they tried to play her off as straight. I'm like, oh, come on.
Mm-hmm. That was the worst. And it was like, she's not. I'm like, why?
They really threw that in. And well, because it's Robert Rodriguez. And I mean, like, come on.
Yeah, very bro-y. Okay, so you mentioned you kind of got introduced with like Universal and B movies. What were some of your favorites, your horror favorites growing up?
Sorry, I have my little notes app because I would just be constantly like, I know I will forget about these in the moment, but I have a very goldfish brain.
Me too.
So
it makes podcasting difficult sometimes.
This is going to be so good. I'm so looking forward to the next 90 minutes of I'm just like, wait, I honestly forgot. So I mean, Plan 9 from Outer Space, since I talked about Ed Wood, like, I mean, we watched that a lot. I still watch it to his memory, and I still enjoy it. I get on my soapbox and say that Ed Wood is a very actually undervalued, underappreciated person in film history, including queer film history.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, like, absolute childhood favorites, I saw Alien and Aliens at a very questionably young age.
Me too. How old for you?
I want to say like 4 for the second one, because I have like a core memory of like sitting on the floor as like in the second movie when Marines are first moving through and they reach all of the cocooned people, and that one girl first starts chest bursting. My parents were like, "Okay, cover your eyes," and I was just like, through the fingers, just like, but I want to see.
Also, everyone, Cressa wrote an incredible article about alien and transness for Dread Central. You should read it. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me write that.
just wanted to plug that since I was trying to figure out a natural way to do it. Thank you for presenting me that opportunity.
Well.
And we'll include that in the show notes too. So you have an easy way of listening to it or reading it. Listening to it, reading it.
Yeah, and in that article I wrote about like the xenomorph and Giger's work specifically, but aliens in talking about, transness, I sort of attribute Ripley as one of my first, like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be equated to like trans identity. It's just simply like that was everyone has their like first person they see when they're little, and they're like, oh, I want to be like that person. That's the person I identify with. Me, very tiny tot, sees Ripley in the second Aliens movie as just like ultra badass, also ultra maternal, and that has always resonated with me. So yeah, the Aliens, and I believe Alien Resurrection was my first R-rated movie in theaters that I got to go see because my parents were like, you've seen the others, so why don't we just take you to this? And then they regretted it because Jean-Pierre Jeunet is crazy, and
that movie is bad shit.
That movie's so bad shit, and I love it.
It's incredible. I wrote an article for Red Central about why that movie is one of my favorites.
I read it.
It's so... Thank you.
There are reasons I'm a big fan of you.
Since we're all doing that, I saw Alien 3. That was my first R-rated horror movie in the movie theater, and I wrote about it for Dread Central.
Oh my god!
The circle closes.
Wow.
This is delicious.
Wow. This is incredible, everyone. All of our articles are in the show notes. Read them. Thanks.
We're not actually going to get to like any of the things we want to get to. We're just going to now hyper focus on the Alien franchise.
Which actually, I think we should. And since we are hyper focusing, what is your order of favorites? I have to know.
Oh my god, I can't do that.
Terry does that a lot, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do.
I don't know. I'm so bad at ordering just because, like, no, honestly, like, I think my opinion will change based on any day of the week. I mean, I think just, I suppose just from a, growing up perspective, the second one is probably the one that has the most value to me in my memories. Yeah. I think the first one is probably the best made. I think 3, that weird quote unquote director's cut. Assembly cut. The assembly cut. Mm-hmm. I watched that and was just like, oh, this actually really fucks. And I guess at the end of all that would be almost in descending order, you could say. So I think the first one is probably like, objectively the best one. But also the second one's really amazing. I don't know.
It is so hard to like differentiate.
What if I just answered like, oh, the second Alien versus Predator, actually?
Honestly, Alien Covenant. If you had said that, we would have been like, we're over, we're done.
I just watched that for the first time last year because I was bored and was like, oh, sure, yeah, I'd love to see some new CGI aliens. And I think I was just on my phone half the time. I was like, this is bullshit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not... great.
It's not great. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's like I'm here to see like H.R. Giger designs do things. I'm not here to watch two Michael Fassbenders go, what is the nature of heaven and hell? And then suddenly Wagner starts playing, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, of course an old, out-of-touch British man directed this and thinks it's like... You know?
Although them like teaching each other how to play the flute, pretty hot.
Oh, no, there was that... Like, people hyped up the Michael Fassbender on Fassbender action so hard that when it finally happened, I was left so wanting. I'm like, they better 69 in the next movie to make up for this. Like, this was a lot of hype up with no payoff.
I love that.
Alien 69, and it's... I mean, that has to be a porno, right? Do you think there's a... Okay, again, I am getting... off track.
No, let's stay on this.
Alien.
I mean,
porno.
It's my favorite franchise. I could like
same.
Yeah,
probably one of. I don't know.
It and Freddy are like neck and neck for me for different reasons. But okay. Getting back on track, did you get scared watching movies as a kid?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what scared me a lot as a kid. I mean, the movie we're going to talk about, absolutely, because I saw that super young. Stuff that should have scared me, that scared a lot of other kids growing up. Like, I mean, alien movies. I never saw the Xenomorph as terrifying. One of my other favorites, I don't know if you would classify it as a horror film necessarily, is The Witches. With Angelica Houston. And I just say that just because I rewatched that also and was like shocked at like, oh my God, I watched this as a little kid. Like, it's intense and crazy.
It's pretty gnarly. Some like the body horror moments of them stripping off their skin and stuff. Yeah.
It's awesome.
It is. It's gnarly. It's a gnarly movie.
That's scary as shit for kids too, because like they get eaten, the kids get absolutely fucked up in that movie too. Like that is
probably says a lot that I was watching it as like a tiny tot, going like, yeah, this is awesome. And then there's like there's home video footage of me somewhere of like in my mom's heels and some purple like scarf or something coming down the stairs, recreating all of Angelica Houston's lines. So where
That's
I
amazing.
Put my identification in that movie. Everyone else is scared. It's just like, oh no, they're eating the children. I'm just like, yes, eat more of them.
And you're like, I want a fabulous wig.
Yes.
And your outfits.
And have a reveal that is just terrifying.
Oh. Trauma. It's incredible.
Oh, trauma.
But then also, so now as an adult, do you still get scared of horror, or are you a little bit more jaded about like getting scared?
I'm actually more scared now. I'm way more sensitive. And I think that's just due in part to a handful of personal factors. I have really bad night terrors, and so I have to be very sensitive to what I'm watching. So I lost a lot of, I would say somewhere in my 20s probably, I started really losing my stomach for like gore, violence, which is funny because like my favorite movie is Titan, which is very violent in the beginning. But there's, I don't know, that's a different podcast. But yeah, I'm way more sensitive now, and I have to be like really in the right mood. But it depends what it is. Like I saw Midsummer 4 times. I saw the 2018 Suspiria like a bunch of times in theaters.
Suspiria.
Oh, it's just mwah.
Chef's kiss of a movie. What
really freaked me out recently that I saw, and it's also probably one of the best movies I've seen recently, is We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Oh. It's a great movie.
I love that movie.
That movie is so good. Oh, I
watched it twice in 24 hours because I had the 24-hour rental, and I was just like, I woke up the next morning and I was like, shit, I gotta watch this again, because like I totally fangirled into Jane's DMs on Twitter because I was like, holy shit, this means so much. Like, you really, like, I've never seen anything feel like dysphoria, and that's just what it was. And she was like, yeah, that was like the whole, I read her interviews and she was like, yeah, that's like the whole point. And I'm like, god damn. And it was just that specific kind of creepy dread that I remember from like being 13 on the internet and going down the dark holes, and you're like, I really shouldn't be watching these creepy YouTube videos. I really shouldn't be, whatever. And it's just, I don't know, that type of dread is like I hate jump scares, but I almost hate this worse, and yet mostly because I'm attracted to it in some ways.
Jane really captured that feeling of being young on the internet and like absolutely incredibly. And like as someone who struggled with like identity and stuff when she was also that age, like for me, I was like, I have never been able to explain that experience until I watched that movie. Like I could never had seen myself, and I was like, holy shit, like how did Jane, I don't understand. It's incredible how they're able to translate that into a movie.
Breathtaking. Movie. I'm so excited to see everything else Jane does. Just based on that.
And it's so weird because like I mean, I'm 41, so like I missed that whole being young on the internet stage. So like, and I'm kind of like happy I did, but also kind of sad because like I hear the stories that Mary Beth talks about and stuff, and it's like, man, what kind of experience was that like? But watching that movie was
Mary and I are both
it
like,
was intenseful.
You couldn't pay me enough money in the world to make me ever want to like relive, go back, like
you could not pay me money to go back on Tumblr and relive the days that I had on Tumblr. Tumblr. Yeah, I can't do it.
I just use Tumblr for porn. That's all I used it for.
I do miss that part of Tumblr. I do miss those were like the early Tumblr days. Like we're getting off topic again, and I love it.
It's amazing.
This is a great tangent. Porn on Tumblr. The good old days.
My favorite is like when Tumblr sends you an email and it's like, we haven't seen you in a while. And I'm like, you know what you did.
Yeah, exactly. Like
you took away the one thing I used you for.
Are you surprised? Like other things that scared me.
So what are some of your favorites as an adult?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, but Titan is probably like my favorite, like just movie overall. Like I have never been so struck by a movie like that. And I don't know. I feel like I saw someone on Letterboxd once say that they're always chasing this feeling of like when they're watching a movie and they know that it's like, oh, this is going to be like the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, you know, you're seeing something that's like really challenging and fresh and like actually like different, and it's pulling from things that you've seen before and that you know you like, but it's I don't know, it's doing something slightly different, or it's using a different language. And so I'm so over the moon and back for Titan. And
it's a great film.
Other one I mentioned, We're All Going to the World's Fair, I guess would be a recent favorite. More all-time favorites, I really, really love Knife Plus Heart.
Me too.
Oh my god, it's like
Jan Gonzalez, love him.
Same. He's just I love him because I love the aesthetics of giallo, but I tend to not actually like giallo movies because they're very misogynistic, they're very transphobic, usually, and you know, just there's nothing really to them except like cool lighting, and then it's women getting killed. So I love Jan Gonzalez for basically taking all of the aesthetics of giallo and then basically being like, I'm gonna make it gay as hell. And Knife Plus Art's like one of the only movies I can think of where it's just like queers own every single part of the narrative. They're the director, they're the DP, they're the protagonist, the antagonist, all the side characters, and it's like, fuck yeah, I love it so much. And it's taking all the genre elements and inverting them while still working within their parameters. And plus the M83 score.
Oh, stellar.
So
what
good.
A talented family.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Like, come on.
It's kind of offensive.
It really is. It's sick. It's like, come on now.
How
you
dare
can't
you.
all be that
sick,
that talented.
Another favorite. Sorry, yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to ask another question, but tell me your other favorite.
Oh, Saint Maud.
Oh, Saint Maud is so good. That final moment of truth.
That final shot is like one of the only times I think I've been just motionless for like an hour. Like I watched it with a friend, and when that happened, like we just sat in complete silence. Like neither of us moved. And the credits just ended, and then we just sat there for like another 10 minutes, just like, so that was something.
Yeah.
I remember like rewinding it a couple times because I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, Jesus Christ.
It's so brief.
It's so good though. Studio House Design just did a really incredible shirt, a Saint Maud like tie-dye shirt, and it is so pretty.
Oh my god. Just what I need, more More horror shorts.
Yep. More horror shorts.
More horror shorts.
But so, you've done some incredible filmmaking, stop motion animation. And how did you kind of fall into this or like discover kind of your passion for filmmaking?
Oh, I loved stop motion as a kid. I got into it because, again, my dad showed me Harryhausen stuff.
Harryhausen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically Clash of the Titans. And I have a really cute story for that. Again, super duper young, like 4 or 5. I don't know, somewhere in there. The core memories are there. The specifics are not. I was so obsessed with the Medusa scene that I made my mom craft like a relatively large size paper version of the Medusa, like just, draw it out and then cut it out so that I could recreate the scene. And so what I would do is frequently I would put on the movie, I would turn all the lights off in the living room, and then I would act out the scene as it happened, including decapitating my paper Medusa. And then I would go and I'd ask my mom, like, can you make me another Medusa? And after like the 5th or 6th time of this happening, she was like, I'm not doing this anymore for you. You're just going to rip it off. I'm like, yeah, but I have to play it out. So I also brought one, I think, with me in one of my best friend's houses. And she had no idea what to do with me because she was just like, oh, let's play, house. Let's do, play dress up and everything. And I'm just like, let's decapitate this Medusa. And she's like, I don't understand.
What's not to understand? She turns you into stone if you look at her, and she's got snakes for hair.
Yeah, it seems straightforward to me, but
yeah,
I guess I'm in the wrong environment. But yeah, between that and my other favorite was, I love this show on PBS called Long Ago and Far Away that always had like different shorts that were like based on different folktales from around the world, and they were animated in different ways, and they had a lot of stop motion. And they had one called The Reluctant Dragon that I found out recently was directed by Bridget Appleby, which made me really excited. And it's just a very adorable, wholesome little fantasy stop motion based on I think it's a legend or a folktale or something of a dragon that's terrorizing the town, and this little boy just goes and visits the dragon and is like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? And the dragon is actually just very good-natured and quiet. And he's just like, oh, I'm not actually doing anything. If people are hearing all these sounds, it's because I'm like coughing or burping or whatever.
Oh.
And then like they hire St. George to come and kill the dragon. And then St. George and the dragon meet, and they're just like, hey, so I don't actually want to kill you. And he's like, cool, I don't want to die. And they're like, you want to just fake it for the crowd? And they're like, yeah, sure. And it's super cute. And at the end, there's a whole message about, whatever. Between those two. Oh, and Wallace and Gromit. Super into Wallace and Gromit.
Oh, Wallace and Gromit.
Those are
Wallace and Gromit is my all-time favorite thing. Oh my fucking god.
Life-changing.
I love those boys.
I think like a close shave, they showed that on PBS, and then afterward they showed it behind the scenes where they were like, this is how we do stop motion, and that's where Tiny Brain Cressa went, oh. And so I took my parents' camcorder and my Legos, and I would start like, a camcorder, so does not do stop frame. So I would just sit there and hit like record, pause, record, pause.
Oh
my god!
To animate like Legos for like, I think I had to do like some project in 5th or 6th grade, and so I was just like, I'll animate Legos to do it, and so that was that.
How long did that take you? Too long, probably.
Oh yeah, I can't even recall. But. Yeah, so I just did that a lot. I loved it. My best friend growing up, we used to make like little Lego shorts all the time. Because at one point in the early 2000s, Lego released like a movie maker where they actually had a stop frame camera.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, huge game changer. I'm sure many, many animators got their start with that. So thanks, Lego. And I didn't really do it again because I never viewed it as a actual viable career option. So somewhere in high school, I was just like, okay, I'm done. That was like a childish pursuit, which is silly. And like 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was working for a media company, and I was producing like a product review show or something. And so I got a lot of free shit from different companies, and one of them was the 2014 Godzilla movie had just come out. Mm-hmm. So NECA sent me at the office, they sent me like a Godzilla that I to this day still use to animate, and I was like, wow, this is so articulated. I'm gonna shoot something with this, because I was like working on some personal project at the time, and I was just like, wouldn't it be so cute to like animate him singing opera? So I did that just for funsies, and because that's what I do in my free time, and uploaded it to the internet, and a lot of people ended up really liking it, to my surprise. So then I just kept making things that I thought were like, oh, these are normally I just assume these are only like fun and cute for me, but it seems like other people get enjoyment out of them. I will continue this. And I think after like a couple years of that, I started trying to actually improve my skills. So I went to SVA and learned more there. And 2018, I want to say, my friend, really good friend, Ryan Osterreich, who owns the Music Box in Chicago, he has always been just generously giving me opportunities, like even when I wasn't doing stop motion and experimenting in other formats. And so he just hit me up. He's like, hey, I like your little I like your Godzilla shit. Do you want to make some bumpers for our film festival? And I was just like, yeah, sure, sounds like super fun. And he was like, this is something you could be like, you could be like doing this for money. I was like, could I? No. Really? And then my other friend, who had a contact at Nighthawk Cinema or something, was just like, no, you should absolutely submit something. So I did, and then I basically pestered people at Alamo, like any email address I could get my hands on, to be like, hey, let me do something for the new Godzilla movie. Let me do something for the new Godzilla movie. And then I left my office job to do this, and
hell yeah,
here I am now. And I actually, when I did the music video for Chelsea Wolfe and Emma Ruth Rundle, that began talks a few years before it came out. So when that became like a floated possibility, that's when I said, okay, time to actually now leave the job we do just for money and hate to do the thing that might not make much money, but is way the hell more fun to do and more satisfying and fulfilling, because it feels like I'm a 10-year-old again animating Legos, It's like, I don't know, I get to be a kid.
That's so amazing.
That's so cool.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I saw, speaking of like Wallace and Gromit and stop motion and everything, I saw the one that I think you did for Music Box. You posted it on maybe Instagram, I think, of the Evil Dead and Wallace bursting through the door. I just loved it. Loved it so much. It's like, this is absurd in the best way.
Ryan never gives me any criteria, really. He whenever I would say once a year I'll make something for him for Music Box, and he'll just be like, hey, I'm doing this stop motion series. It'd be really fun to do a mashup of different movie properties like Evil Dead 2 and Wallace and Gromit and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I can fuck with that. And so he just said, just mash stuff up. You don't even got to tell me what it is. Just make something and send it to me. And so I sent him that and was laughing to myself because I thought it was just I thought Evil Cheddar was hilarious. I'm like, he's gonna hate me.
How could he? It was so
yeah. I believe his immediate response was just Jesus Christ, Cressa.
And I do have to ask, because I went down your IMDb page, and I'm always curious whenever we talk to someone that has worked on these big productions, what was it like being a production assistant on The Avengers and Men in Black and Dark Knight Rises? Because that just seems like, I don't know, it seems exhausting, and I'm just curious what that was like.
Oh yeah, it was super exhausting.
Yeah.
It was exhausting and toxic and terrible, honestly. I worked with cool people. On The Avengers, that was actually my first job in New York City. I moved here.
Oh, wow.
And I had a couple little random gigs, but The Avengers I worked on for 3-ish months, I want to say. I was part of the VFX unit, which was fun because I didn't have to run around with the giant crew. It was this pretty small, couple camera people from Industrial Light and Magic, and a few PAs got assigned to each one, and mostly we were just doing lockups so that they could do all of the the final battle in New York City. they just needed to do like, I don't even remember the name of anything anymore. Like the big, they just needed to do plates of like the city so that that could be like the background for all of the CGI.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there to assist them. It's cool because I have a hat that says that I worked on it. My credit did not get into the movie, unfortunately.
Rude.
I thought so too. I was just like, I waited the whole credits.
Oh.
Whatever.
That's the worst.
I'm messing around. I don't actually give a shit. But
it's still rude.
No, being a PA on big budget movies like that blows. Honestly, it's like a short day is like 16 hours. I've been on sets like for Men in Black 3 that were like 20 plus.
Jesus.
And like
fuck that.
No, it's terrible. And like the pay is not good enough to make it worthwhile. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of stories online about how toxic film crews are too. And like very true. Oh my goodness. A lot of grips and teamsters that are not very nice men. So
great. Awesome. Thanks, film industry.
That's my downer ending for your question. Just like, wow, what was it like working on these great movies? I'm just like, I fucking hated it. I didn't like
I feel like production assistants are, they get shit on a lot, it seems like. And it's like, it's very important work. I just... It's
nothing but being shit on, And I knew people and friends, too, who, like, made careers out of it. You know? That was their entire life, was, like, 6-7 workday weeks where you're going 16 to 20 hours, if not, whatever, and you're not eating good food, and you're basically just sitting or standing. Oh, food's awful.
It's almost like bartending, where you're always moving, you never eat, and like you are like incredibly unhealthy, but also like just exhausted. It's just the worst.
Yeah,
it sounds like it sounds similar in that like vein of bartending, of just like never being able to relax.
Yeah, you're always tired is what it is. And like that life was miserable. And I remember after like doing a year or two of PA jobs, I was like, I'm done. I'm switching to editing. People would call and be like, hey, are you available next week? I'm like, no, please take me off your list.
Available never, ever again. Well, do we want to talk about the film that you brought today?
Oh, shit,
what are we talking about?
We've been bouncing around. I completely forgot that we actually had an intended topic. Yes. The film that traumatized me as a child was Day of the Dead.
Which I have to say, when I was titling our recording studio, I almost typed Daddy of the Dead.
Hey.
That sounds way more fun.
Is Bub Daddy? No, he's not. But
no,
I was like,
Bub, use these objects in front of you on the table. Which one does he gravitate to? He's really interested in the magic wand. Mary liked that one.
Broke Mary Beth.
So in Day of the Dead, as the world is overrun by zombies, a small group of scientists and military personnel dwelling in an underground bunker in Florida must determine whether they should educate, eliminate, or escape the undead horde, or declare Bub a daddy.
I like this version. Let's stick on this. Let's just dream up like Daddy of the Dead.
Day of the Daddy. I'm here for
Daddy
that.
of the Dead has to exist in some form already.
I feel like Rule 34 is more prevalent now than ever, where it's like, even by just mentioning it, we've already spoken it into existence.
It's like a tulpa. You just say it and it manifests on the internet.
There is a book from 2014, Daddy of the Dead. Bert Hamburg is no hero, but when it comes to being separated from his 4-year-old daughter at the dawn of the zombie apocalypse, he'll do anything to find her. Driving over 350 miles in a freezing snowstorm, yada yada yada. Boring.
So he's not like he's not a sexy.
It's
zombie.
not fun, daddy. It's like it's just like daddy, like
a literal daddy.
Oh, that's not as fun.
Ew, that's not fun.
Well, anyway,
all right, so all right, take it. Why is this your Scar for Life moment? Take us back to when you first saw this. How old were you? How did you see this? Give us your horror story.
Okay, so. I was 8, and this will age me. I loved going to the local Blockbuster and looking at all the VHS cover art of the horror section.
Me too.
And my parents were very insistent, like, do not watch any of these. You will have a bad time. And I was like, whatever. I'm going to be 10 soon. I know everything. And my best friend growing up, had managed to get a copy from the neighbors and was like, do you want to watch this during a sleepover? And I was like, yes, I do. And that was a mistake. I very well and truly was inconsolable for years. Like anything zombie related, I would just freak the fuck out. If someone moaned in just the right way nearby, if it was silence and there was like a shuffling of feet sound, little me was just not having it, just could not sleep, just horrifying. And the only way I got over it was because somewhere in high school, 28 Days Later came out, and I was getting really into wanting to be a filmmaker. And so everyone was saying, oh, this really cool new indie film came out, and they shot it on digital video. You have to see it because this is what you want to do. And I was like, fuck, it's zombies. I can't do that. So I with my dad, I went about desensitizing myself, and I watched anything I could find. So we went through the whole horror section at what was now not a Blockbuster, but a Hollywood Video. Oh. And we went through like Dead Alive or Brain Dead, all of the Return of the Living Deads. We just moved through all of them until I was at a point where I was like, I think I can do it. And then I watched it and I'm like, they're not even fucking zombies. All of you lied to me. You could have just said, they're not zombies, Cressa. It's fine. They're just really hyper angry people. And it's like that. I could have survived that. But
now you've seen a bunch
that's
of
the thing. It's
movies.
like now I've seen the library of them. So now I may as well just like, okay, cool. I've accidentally trained myself to like them. So let's go down this route further. And senior year of high school, I made a 40-minute zombie movie. And that ended up getting shown to the entire school because my principal was like, wow, you made this whole thing yourself? That's great. And I thought I was being so artsy and brilliant and daring because I had just gotten into like Gus Van Sant and saw like Elephant and stuff. And I was like, what if I make a zombie movie that has a lot of very long, unbroken takes and doesn't actually show the zombies much and is actually just like a melodramatic love story, but like the threat of the zombies are there. It's a metaphor.
Wow, you were way ahead of A24 game before like elevated horror became a thing.
You know,
you were ready.
They stopped taking my calls.
Stop calling us about the melancholy long take zombie
They're just like,
movie.
listen, we get that you had this idea once many years ago before we did to have a quote unquote elevated horror movie. So that was that. And then
that is amazing.
What was the reception?
Oh, I mean, it was high school. A lot of the people were in it. So, small town, all of the drama club were the stars. And I think it was also just a nice excuse to get out of class. So like, yeah, no, it's probably my favorite high school memory. It's like when it ended, everyone was, like clapping and stuff. And I sold DVDs to everyone and all the teachers were like, wow, yeah, okay. Now I see why you dropped calculus. You don't fucking need calculus to make that. And I'm like, thank you for finally recognizing that.
What was it called?
Daddy of the Dead. I'm just kidding.
Wouldn't that be a fun little twist? No, it was way more emo than that. It was called Until Dawn Wakes Us. Because it was about finding love at the end of the world.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I want a copy of this movie.
No, you don't. But thank you.
So was Day of the Dead your first zombie movie? Was that your introduction to zombies?
That was it. That was the one. And
Jesus.
That's quite a hardcore one to go into.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like, talk about deep end of the pool. Just because like after that, it's like all of them seemed way the fuck more tame. And like watching Night of the Living Dead was just like, oh, this is awesome. And I could have handled this. Dawn of the Dead, like, oh, I could have handled this. And Day of the Dead is like, I tried. I rewatched it for this podcast. I have not seen it for like over a decade, and I can tell you I safely watched about 70% of it, which were the parts where everyone was mostly just screaming at each other. All the zombie parts could not even go near, because I've come back around to having no stomach for it. And
okay,
just the violence and the gore in that is just so crazy that it's just like that's what messed me up, I think, the most as a kid, was like it's so realistic, and like finding out that like, oh yeah, they did use real guts, and like But it's fun because like, yeah, they used in the, I think specifically when Rhodes gets ripped in half, that's like there's like a story where like they had all these pig guts that they were going to use, and like some PA forgot to plug them into the freezer, so they all stank. Like if you look up on YouTube, you can find like behind the scenes footage where they yell cut, and then Rhodes is like, you know, the actor is covered in all this, and he's like ready to vomit because of the smell, and all the PAs and zombies are like trying to fan him. They're like blowing like Lysol and stuff. Yeah, they use like real guts. Yeah. Which is, I'm sure, why they look so realistic. And
I was going to say, well, that explains a lot about what that... So this is my first time seeing it. So I don't know a lot about this movie.
Oh, so yeah. What did you think?
So it was funny. So I watched it in my hotel room, and I usually watch things on my laptop, and I actually have like a decent-sized TV. So it was really cool to watch that. But at first, I was like, this is kind of silly. Like, the zombies look kind of silly. This isn't going to be... Like, it's going to be very different from other Romero stuff I've seen. And then gets going, and then I was like, I was wrong. Like, it felt like it was going to be a little bit sillier. I was very incorrect. And I was texting Terry. I was like, this ending is the most fucking horrific thing I've ever seen. Like, this is awful. In a good way, but Jesus.
It's a... Yeah, Day of the Dead's one of those.
Mean movie.
It's a mean movie. It's so bleak, and I think that's part of what also messed me up so much seeing it and like watching it again too now and being like recognizing how bleak it is and like, oh, there, like you said, like, oh, there's like no silliness, there's no levity in this movie, and it's sort of Day of the Dead falls into like a weird category for me of like, I don't enjoy watching it. I don't know if I've ever enjoyed it. I owned it. I met Tom Savini and had him sign a copy and talk to him about it, which was adorable. I cool. had a Bub shirt at one point, but I can't say I ever liked it or enjoyed it, but I still recognize that it's like great. It's a great movie, and it's really fabulous at what it wants to do. You know, it does it really fucking well.
It sure does.
I think watching it now was interesting too because it felt weirdly timely. I don't know. Like, I feel like
yeah. Let's talk about this.
Let's talk about this. Yeah. Like, I have all these little notes I made as I was watching it. I'm just like, oh my God. I remember watching this like growing up and watching it again like with my dad or something, and we were always just like, wow, Rhodes is such a caricature, like da-da-da. And now I'm watching it now and I'm just like, no, he's really not. Like, I feel like he would have been at the January 6th insurrection. He would have, you know, you could just make this movie again now, change nothing except just like put like a Make America Great Again hat on him. And you are like, everyone would be like, oh my God, it's a movie about Trumpism. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Everyone in that movie, like all of the men, a lot of like the military guys are just like yelling racial slurs, telling Sarah, like yelling about Sarah's like dick and making fun of her for being the only woman. Like the most unsafe space I could ever fucking imagine being in. If you're not a cis white man, like cis straight white man, like that just sounds like it was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. The way that they talked to Sarah was something that I really picked up on this watch, because like the military in particular, but pretty much everyone except for like the science side of things never really calls her by her name or her title. It's like, you're not strong enough. It's they're angry that she has a dick that she can get off on, and like, give us the rest of it shot at loving. Look here, woman.
Hey, lady. You know, hey, bitch.
Yeah, hey, lady. Yeah, it's like at one point it's like, you better watch yourself. I mean, physically watch yourself. It's like the threat of sexual violence in this is like, without even like saying it, the threat of sexual violence is high at this movie, and she's the only woman in this film.
And that's something like,
except for the zombies.
True, and that is something that if I wasn't cognizant of as a kid, I certainly am the fuck now, and that threat is something that also usually keeps me away from a lot of movies, even if they're not horror, is that if there's a threat of sexual assault, I tend to be like, I have to research movies before I see them. If there's even like a whiff of it, cannot do it. And so watching it this time, I was like, oh, holy shit. That, like, I figured that was there, but like, I didn't remember it being this hardcore.
Yeah.
And so if anything, it's like more terrifying to watch now because I have more of an, you know, I'm not a child. I have more of an idea of how the world works and have lived experiences. And I mean, as a kid, I I loved Sarah. And I'm watching it now too, and I'm just like, yeah, fuck yeah. I feel like in some ways this came out a year or two before Aliens. I feel like she shares some DNA with Ripley. Like,
oh, she's a badass in this.
And I was thinking about, I was like, I don't hear her talked about nearly as much as like a Ripley or
Sarah Connor.
Yeah. But she falls into that same category. And I think that she's so fascinating because she has like, I feel like, you know, Sarah Connor is very much like a warrior, and so is Ripley, but Sarah's a little bit more like she's science oriented. So it's interesting to see her as that character, but also like she's the one schooling everybody.
Yeah, schooling everybody. Like she is just, I didn't remember the fact that she really just is barking at everybody. Like, no, you're gonna fuck this up for everyone. Like, do not do this. Like, she's the only one that has any sense of like future planning, of like logical reasoning.
Which is incredible because she's the only woman. And so without her, all of these like ridiculously macho guys are gonna clash and fall apart. So it's like, maybe don't treat the one woman who has any sight of like planning. And it is just a fascinating kind of look at gender when you would not necessarily think about that at first with like a Romero, like from a 1978, no, not 1978, 85. But it's just like very critical of not just gender, but, you know, like the military and all like patriarchal systems too. It's really fascinating.
And she's also the only one that ever attempts like any kind of compromise. Like she's the one who at one point, I think twice in the movie, she very aggressively is just like, no, we need to just sit down and talk about this. We can work together. We have the same goals. And it's always like fucking Rhodes and his little, you know, lapdogs that are just like, no, we have to do things our way because we have this sense of control that we've been, I don't know, conditioned with in the before times, and now this is our one time to do a power grab.
She's sort of the one idealist in this movie that is stuck in like camps, because like on this rewatch, I particularly noticed that there are like three different camps of dealing with things. You have the military, which is, you know, it's very ruthless, disregard for life, and John, the pilot says that, you know, that Rhodes won't shoot Billy because Billy knows electronics. He won't shoot me because I'm his ride out of here. He probably won't shoot Frankenstein because Frankenstein talks a good game. And he's like, but the rest of you better start worrying. So like, this is the military. And then you have the science that is represented by the equally kind of uncaring pursuit for some kind of solution with Dr. Logan, who steals Major Cooper's body and takes off everything except for his brain stem that's attached to his spine. And he's feeding Bub the remaining body parts of the military people that have died. He's also utilitarian and morally gray, you know?
Reduce, reuse.
I mean, it makes sense when you say it like that. Now, I had forgotten about that part with Logan, Dr. Logan. I completely forgot that he had that whole weird shit where they listen to his recordings and he's like acting out some weird childhood trauma with the zombies. And it's like, oh, fuck, I thought this guy was cool. Yeah, I feel like a lot, honestly, like, I feel like people reach a little too far into Romero's movies to find like, you know, quote unquote, like meaning and subtext. But I think to what you were saying, like, how this is critical of the military and stuff and patriarchy, I do really love it. Like, I love his politics in this movie because every single quote unquote like macho dude with a gun fucks it up for literally everybody and gets themselves killed. You know, it's an inversion of like, I mean, I know it was like a response to like Reaganism and like this kind of peak of excessive American greed, you know, where we're getting like these blockbusters left and right that are dudes with guns and the military and cops saving everything and everyone. And here it's just like, no, they're all fucking morons and they're just, they can't see further than 5 feet in front of them and their own egos.
But going back to how we were talking about how this is relevant now, like cops now, like, I don't even think they try to hide any kind of decency anymore. And like in a movie like this, you see, like you were saying, you see these cops and you're like, oh yeah, like we've seen, like, this is not far out of what would happen if there was like a zombie apocalypse and if there's going to be like a kind of a hierarchy. Like those people are going to like let the power go to their heads and treat everyone like shit and threaten them and have massive egos, but like have absolutely no idea what they're doing other than bossing people around. And it's like, no, that's gonna, like, that's happening. And that is, like, so upsettingly relevant now. And, like, just as things get bad, I'm like, oh, I don't want to think about like what you see so many movies about, like the hierarchies and power structures that evolve. I'm like, I don't want to know. Like, I don't ever want to find out what that looks like. Nope.
Well, because we already live with it. We already live with it in our daily lives. You know, it might not be like in this fantastical setting, but we still live with it, you know, as like queer people or, you know, as a trans person. Like, this is just a day-to-day life. You know, I've never felt safe around cops. I've never felt safe around macho dudes who love guns. I've never felt safe around people who love zombie movies for these very reasons, who are just like, oh yeah, you know, people like those kinds of people like Ted Cruz or whatever, they probably see like Rhodes as like the hero and it's like a tragedy, you know, because this is like the fantasy, you know, they want the apocalypse to happen so that they can be this douchebag who is in power now. They want to be Negan from Walking Dead. They want to be XYZ, any number of these things. And any of us who like aren't fitting into that, like you said, this cishet white man, we're all just like terrified of that because it's just like, no, we're already semi living under your boot. So like, we don't want to see that unhinged.
More unhinged than it already is.
Yeah. Like unhinged from like, I don't know what keeps them hinged currently, but yeah, if it got to the point of this unhinging, it's like, that's one of the worst nightmares in the world, which is probably why I don't like doing zombie stuff anymore, because of that is always a pervasive thing.
Well, and I was thinking about how there's these three different camps, because we talked about the military and the science stuff, but then John also kind of represents a religious angle to it, where he basically says, we're being punished by the creator. There's nothing we can do. So we should just find a paradise and go live there because there's nothing else we can do. And I love his line, like the way he's talking about, he visited a curse on us so that we might get a look at what hell was like. Maybe he didn't want to see us blow us up and put a big hole in the sky. Maybe he figured we were getting too big for our britches trying to figure this shit out, which leans again into the sort of Frankenstein God complex, you know, motif that obviously is on the nose, represented by Logan, aka Frankenstein. But you have all of three of these things, and in the middle you have Sarah just being like, okay, but if we could like figure this shit out all together, then maybe we could actually do something. But no, but everyone is like, no, I have my men, you have your men, and you, Sarah, are just in the middle of all of this. And it's a really frustrating watch to watch as an adult, particularly watching it right now with everything going to hell. And I'm seeing all these different camps of different things. I'm just like, okay, we are fractioning just as much as this movie is. And I think this movie also questions what it means to be human, because everyone is like talking about how Rhodes is going to execute people. And someone says he can't be that inhuman. And John says, no, he's human. That's what scares me. And there's this line between like, what is the zombie? What is the human? Are we that much different? Are we equals in that regard? And to some extent, I do think a lot of zombie movies kind of question that line between human and zombies. But this one does it in such a upsetting way that like, it makes my stomach sick whenever I watch this.
Yeah. It's definitely like an often used theme of like, people are the real monsters. It's like, you know, it's not necessarily like profound to say that, but it is always true. And I think like this is one of the few movies that doesn't really have like a bright spot. Like even at the end, you know, spoilers.
Spoilers, yeah.
They get to an island, I guess, but like by that point, based on the beginning and the other dream sequences we've seen, we are A, unsure if this is actually real, or B, the way that she was just counting down days in the opening, is she just counting down days again now? And it's just a matter of like, okay, it's always going to be this small window. Like, it's a nice, idyllic final shot.
But it's also not. Because I was thinking about that watching this with John's big speech about how, you know, Sarah and everyone down here is all... Where is this? Okay. Talking about how, like, all down here in this bunker, they have the books and records of the top 500 companies. There's articles about the Defense Department budget, immigration records, census reports, files on all the disasters in the US of A. And he's like, why? It's just going to be a tomb that no one ever pays attention to. We're focused on this sort of old world order. of keeping records and all the stuff when none of that really matters. And so that's what also kind of makes this final shot to me kind of nihilistic in a way, is that yes, maybe they've gotten to happiness and some kind of paradise, but she's back to her old things of like keeping track and keeping all the stuff. Like we have like a calendar and I'm going to keep marking it. I'm going to keep doing all this stuff. So she's holding on to that old world. And it kind of asks the question of like, you're going through all these old motions. Are you a zombie yourself? You might be living, but...
Okay.
Damn. This
stresses me out about zombie movies, though, because it's like, they're survivors, but I always think about, like, okay, this is like the movie, I don't really watch The Walking Dead, but it's like, okay, here's the universe of the movie. The cycle is so, like, it's the same cycle. And, I mean, again, it's like zombie movies, but like zombie shows, it's always like, you're trying to survive, you meet someone, you get betrayed. And it's just like, that just sounds also like a miserable existence. Like, there's no winning. You know what I mean? And that was why zombie movies always fuck me up. Because I'd be like...
Just like real life.
Not to get like super dark here, but it is getting dark of just like...
This movie's dark.
What existence, like, is it worth living in such a situation? I mean, I guess with them, they're like, hopefully doing something to save people. But I don't know. It's just something about zombie movies are so nihilistic to me that it's just like, ugh.
It's why I can't do them anymore. Yeah.
Yes.
I've never been able to do this movie. I was a huge zombie fan. I watched a lot of zombie movies growing up. I love Night of the Living Dead, which I was too young when I saw it to really get the subtext of what was really happening. It was just this really kind of creepy black and white movies. Black and white movies were always safe to me because it was like Universal monster movies and all that kind of stuff. And this was a movie in which someone is literally eating someone's, guts, and a girl kills her mom, and it was horrifying. And then you have Dawn of the Dead, which felt like this big sweeping adventure movie set in a mall, yes, and there's zombies, yes, and there's horrible humans, yes, but it felt like an adventure film. And I remember watching those and being like, okay, I'm going to watch Day of the Dead now, and watching this and absolutely hating it, not knowing why. The characters are so unlikable. Everyone was yelling. There's this like uneasy sense of doom that hangs over the entire thing, where there's like, I think you mentioned it earlier, Cressa, there's no humor in this movie whatsoever. And I don't think I ever finished it. I don't think until last night when I rewatched this movie, I do not think I've ever seen this movie all the way through, because it just makes me feel sick to my stomach.
Yeah, it's just bad things happening for an hour and 40 minutes. It's just bad things. Like which is why it's just like, whenever I meet someone who's just like, oh yeah, it's like my favorite movie ever, I'm just like, fucking why? Like,
red flag. No, I'm kidding. But also
super red flag. No, I'm not kidding. I consider that a major red flag.
And so, like, I knew some things about it, but it was one of those movies I didn't really look into because I wanted to see it. And I kind of, like, went into this one virtually blind. Because, like, I knew some of the gifts, like the guy getting pulled back and, like, getting his kind of torn open, and, like, the arm part, which is absolutely so weird, but incredible.
The arms through the wall is so cool. At the very beginning.
I do love that opening, yeah.
It's so good. I mean, like, so that weird, but I also obsessed with it. Like, her face is incredible. But I just did not realize how upsetting it was going to be, because it's like, I always feel like, especially with like 70s and 80s zombie movies, it's a little bit of a mixed bag of like silly and like not that upsetting, but this one was just like, haha, you're gonna be really shocked at what is happening to the human body, not just from zombie attacks but from the doctor. Like, that fucked me up too. I thought, like, just reminded me a lot of, like, in times of horrific war, like, experiments on bodies, and this again, like, what is human? Like, they're zombies, and this is a whole like dark, again, another dark conversation about just like the way, like, what humans are and who decides what is a human. And then how did they determine, like, oh, they can't feel pain? It's like, but how do you know? Like, they're just making all these assumptions through research, and something of, like, that also just, like, deeply upsets me, because it is this weird ethical question, like, are they still human? And what does that mean to do these experiments on these humans?
And I mean, like, that, bringing that up to make an already dark conversation even darker, it's like the United States has a really dark history of experimenting on human bodies, during the slavery days. And it kind of evokes that a little bit. And, it's really just a big fruit basket of just shit, it's not, it's really like hearing both of your takes on it too, that makes me feel very validated, just because it's like, damn, what? I really should have not seen that as an 8-year-old.
No.
It's like, wow. Oh, because like I'm actually listening to you both now and I'm just like, damn, I think I'm actually traumatized more now by it. Like I hadn't even realized these other layers. I was more just like, wow, that guy getting pulled apart was really scary.
Yeah.
And it's so claustrophobic. And now it's like, oh shit.
What we're seeing today is happening in this movie, and it's unpleasant to watch a movie that is like pretty much presenting what is happening today in a non-fun way of like satire. It's like literally just,
yeah, it's unfun satire.
Right. There's no escaping that kind of feeling, and this movie just sort of impounds it. And the line that really got me this time was, I can't remember. I think it might have been Frankenstein that says this, of civil behavior is what distinguishes us from the lower forms. Yeah. Go about things in an orderly fashion without attacking each other like beasts in the wild. If civility isn't rewarded, there's no use for it. No use for it at all. And then he goes on talking about how the zombies can be tricked into being good little boys and girls the same way that we were tricked into the promise of some reward to come. And that kind of distills...
That fucked me. That line was like, I can't do this. Right? I was like, it was like near the end, and I was like, I'm like, I cannot do this right now. Like, this was not what I was expecting out of this movie.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that at all. Like, just mentally was not ready for what happened with this movie.
Well, and I think that this movie is where we can really kind of like say thank you or fuck you about all the zombie movies that came afterwards. Even like Walking Dead, like all of the stuff that they're saying was said much better in this movie. This movie does it, and like just sort of drops the mic and says, you can't touch this. This is the truth. This is horrifying. This is what we're all going to talk about for the next, however many years since 1985. I'm bad with math, but it must have been 35 or so, 36 years. Like,
almost 40. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that we're talking weird. The same thing that this movie just sort of like mic dropped on.
And like from an ideological perspective, I've always been scared of zombies, to pivot a little bit, but not really, because as a queer person, as a trans person, zombies to me represent like to some extent the same fear I have of like cishet normativity, the patriarchy, white supremacy, fascism. It's this like brainless, perpetually consuming mass of pale bodies that will violently devour anything that isn't like them or convert them into one of them. And that shit is so fucking terrifying to me. And so to see it in this very like visceral way is always really terrifying. And it's also just like, it's your body being used in a way you don't consent to. It's your body being used against you if you become one, if you get eaten, or if you just become a zombie too. And that's always something like even outside of zombie movies, that's something that is just the darkest of nightmares for me. And here, we keep harping on how it's like there's no levity in this movie, and like unlike literally any other zombie movie, I actually can't think of another zombie movie I've seen. And in my period of time in the 2000s when I was watching a bunch of them, I can't think of another one that's this endlessly bleak. There's at least something. There's at least some heroic of some kind. There's at least some joke. There's at least if nothing else, the effects or the acting or something makes it kind of like humorous to watch.
No, I don't think there's, I mean, even as much as I think Sarah's a badass, I don't think anyone in this movie is likable.
No.
I really don't. And that's, there's like a discussion that could be had about, does a movie have to have likable characters for you to enjoy it? And I definitely don't think that's the case. But here it's like, it's so oppressive on top of the fact that like, I don't really like any of these characters, that it's violently mean. It's that's
a good way to put it.
I don't know how to really adequately describe it.
Violently mean, I think, is a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I feel like there's no one that you're supposed to be rooting for. It feels like it doesn't feel like we're supposed to, like, maybe Sarah a little bit, but there isn't as much like empathy being built in this movie with like a character or two. Like it's very much just like, no, everyone here is an asshole.
Everyone's
like,
stretched to the breaking point. And that's one thing that you get in the very beginning of the film where it's like, you know, Miguel has been working forever and he's snapping at everyone. She's trying to give him a sedative and he's like, you know, demeaning her. And this is supposed to be the person that, you know, is sort of like her boyfriend, I guess. There's all of it just... everyone is just so stressed out and no one...
That's what it... Stressed out, too. This movie is stressful because it feels like everyone is the most stressed they've ever been.
Yes.
I do think that this is Romero's sort of like fuck you to the system because he originally planned this to be in his quotes, the Gone of the Wind of zombie films. But following budget disputes, and he wanted to release the film completely unrated and not have like... He wanted it to be this artistic kind of very violent film. And the budget people were like, if you're not going to make it R-rated, we're going to cut your budget in half. So his budget got cut in half. He had to rewrite the script, I think 5 times in order to get this. And I feel like you can sort of see that desperation, that frustration in this film of him like, just like, I need to make this over the top. I need to top my previous 2, you know, zombie movies. And so I'm just going to do this whole fuck you thing. And that's what the film feels like. I think the frustration comes through it from him.
Which to some extent I think is kind of like not a sign of a not great artist in some regard, just because it's like, bro, the violence was that important to you. Like the amount of gore was that important to you that you sacrificed what was ultimately this bigger vision. You know, like I maybe that's just me, but I think that's a really silly hill to die on and get your budget cut over, especially if you had this like other thing and this whole other movie that was going to say other things. And I don't know, I get that was sort of the thing and of the subgenre in horror, which is like, you know, people, all the splatter gore fans and stuff, it's probably trying to appease them. But like, I don't know, I would have loved to have seen what that initial thing would have been. His
165-page script was the original one.
Jesus Lord.
What?
Yeah.
And I think he adapted some of that for Land of the Dead. Yeah, because I remember I remember like when I was going through my whole zombie phase, I remember reading obsessively about it.
I do wonder if the gore in this and his desire to do this might have stemmed from the fact that Return of the Living Dead came out the same year. I don't know which one came out first, but like there was like this big divide between the producers of that film, where like someone got the title Living Dead. He didn't get the title Living Dead. That's why it's Dawn of the Dead after Night of the Living Dead, because there was this fracture between who had the rights. And so you had Return of the Living Dead coming out in 85, the same time as Dawn of the Dead came out in 85. And I do wonder if that might have fueled some of it.
Isn't that so silly?
I do wonder. Like that's total like just
that,
me
absolutely.
thinking off the cuff, but like, because like Return of the Living Dead tackles some similar things, but does it in a much more humorous, you know, style. Yeah. And this one is like, you know, 1970s never left. Like we're going back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the sort of grindhouse, the sort of like fuck you, you know, drive-in type movies. Yeah. And so I do wonder if that was part of it.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised, and I didn't know that. The title thing, that's actually really sad, considering he's sort of, you know, grandfathered all of that.
Yeah, so what happened was, I'm looking at the Return of the Living Dead Wikipedia page. John Russo worked on Night of the Living Dead. I think he might have been a producer on it. And when they parted ways after that film, Russo retained the rights to any titles featuring Living Dead, while Romero was free to create his own series of sequels.
Good Lord.
That feels so petty.
That's what happened at that point.
That feels so petty. That's like someone splitting away from frickin' like Toho and being like, oh, by the way, you can't name any of them Godzilla.
Yeah,
call it something else. I'm just like, oh, fucking...
Oh, he was the writer. He was the writer on Night of the Living Dead.
That's so petty.
Russo was.
So is there anything else you want to hit on before we give this a rating out of 5? Because you already told us if this movie still scares you now, and
yeah, so 1,000%. I mean, I couldn't watch the whole thing. Like, the ending, the finale started, and I went, nope, off. Like, I didn't even I have a really nice TV. I love watching movies. I did not watch it on the TV. I watched it on a small window on my laptop so I could manage it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And again, this is still me, like, occasionally skipping through, and then, I forgot about this scene in Logan's office, so I'm going to put hands over the screen so I don't see it. That's just where I'm at now. Like,
I do have to say, as like a gore hound, I did love the finale of this. I love gore. I'm a fan of gore. The finale is fantastic, but like I can imagine how traumatizing that would be, because it's realistic.
It's fucking scary. The thing that is probably the most deeply embedded from being a child, like I can physically relive it, is when that one dude, it's an over the head shot of a dude who's laying down and they're all kind of like ripping at his neck, and then they pull his head off as he's still screaming, and you hear the voice distort. Sorry, Mary
Beth texted me at that moment.
I texted Terry and I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in a horror movie. Like, this might be the most fucked up thing I've seen in a horror movie. Like, this screaming and his vocal cords ripping. I was like, Like, that is a hell that I've never even considered in my entire life. And now I have it in my head. And it will
never leave your head. It will never leave your head. I have not seen that scene since probably high school. So like 20 years ago. I have not seen it since then. It is still there. I can still hear it. And
same. And the thing is, I don't even think I got to that when I watched this as a kid, because I was like, this movie makes me feel unpleasant. I'm going to turn it off. This is not Dawn of the Dead. I don't think I ever got to the finale. So watching it as an adult, I'm like, holy shit, this still is
whole 30 extra minutes here at the end of just brutality.
There is.
And that's the thing, like, definitely like, not for me, but like if you are a gorehound, it's like this is sort of creme de la creme. I remember when I 4 years ago, I think it was Metrograph here in New York hosted Tom Savini, and I went with a friend, and he said Day of the Dead is like his best work.
Hands down,
I would agree. Of the
stuff I've seen of his. I mean, even like the zombie in the beginning, the doctor, he's nicknamed like Dr. Tongue, the zombie. I think it's the very first zombie you see. I thought that was a person, and it's puppetry.
That blew my mind too when I learned that. I'm like, what the shit?
I'm like, how do they do that? Because like, there's no jaw, and I'm like, how is this? How is the person in there doing this? Do they not have a jaw? Because that's possible. But then I find out, it's
and that's just impressive too. And that's where like I see that, and I'm less freaked out by that because it's like terrifying and gross. But I'm also like, wow, that's so cool. You did that with a puppet.
How did they do that?
As soon as puppets get into it, I'm always just like, oh my god, cool. That's a puppet. Last thoughts on this movie before we give it a rating. I scrolled down here. I have all my little notes. Having not seen it in so long, I still remembered all of Rhodes' really wacky lines. Like, I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein. All you're giving us is a shitload of Greek salad, all these lines. And I was just like, word for word, I still knew them all. And I'm like, does this guy just like sit in his bunker and he's just like coming up, like he's talking to himself in the shower like we do when we're imagining scenarios where we have to confront someone. And he's just like, yeah, I'm going to say this.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to use this.
I'm going to say something about Greek salad.
This performance should be
It's so good. It verges real close.
But it's not.
It does. There were a couple points where I was like, ooh, this is almost campy. This is almost like a little bit too much.
It's kind of the highlight of the movie. I love it. I've always loved his performance. Like,
even his last line, you're gonna choke on them when they're like carrying his
This is so dumb of me because I didn't realize what he was saying until I was an adult. I don't know why. It's just one of those dumb things that, child brain just imprinted, that he was calling for like one of his military dudes. I thought he was saying a name. I thought he was saying like O'Connell or something. And it was like, I rewatched it once in my 20s with someone who needed subtitles, and I saw choke on them, and I was like, you're fucking kidding me. That's what he's saying? That's so metal.
That changes the ending a lot. Like your view. I
mean, now I just I just have that phrase in my back pocket. Anytime I'm gonna come to blows with someone, I'm just gonna choke on them. Choke on them.
Choke on them.
I wrote a little note here. This is probably really stupid. I wrote, Bill and John are 1,000% gay. No one's gonna live in the apocalypse in this adorably coordinated home space with fine cable knit sweaters. Are you kidding me? And like, we don't see anyone else's living situation. They are just, the most we see is this like gray concrete depressing bunker, and these two dudes are just like, come on in, bless this house, here's our, and like the pillows are fucking matching, and they're just like,
I'm glad you brought that up, because like I literally paused the movie, got on my computer, it was Googling gay, and no one has written anything that I could find about it. I was like Day of the Dead gay character, nothing. And it brought up the TV series, which I've never seen. And I was like, and I typed in the characters' names and gay, and nothing came up. Like, how is no one writing about this? Because they are gay. They have to be gay.
I think this is your calling. I always had a
pitch me again.
Yeah, all right. I was like, so here's why I think Bill and John are gay. Based purely on these facetious archetypes.
I mean, it was the 80s. Like that. That is how. True. This is at the same time where you knew that
they're signaling.
The two vampires in Friday, or the vampire and his assistant, were gay because they go antiquing. Like that's that. True. It's those type of things. It's those stereotypes.
Isn't it incredible that antiquing, and in Salem's Lot, antiquing means you're gay? Like that just
seriously
went over my head.
Oh yeah,
like a few years ago when I was with like this who I call my gay uncles, and they were just like, oh, do you want to go antiquing? And I'm just like, I mean, I guess. And then they explained that all.
Yep.
I'm surprised that we went this entire conversation. I'm looking at the time. I'm like, oh, fuck, it's already almost 8. And we never talked about Bub.
I know. We never talked about Bub.
We never talked about Bub.
The reason I believe that I eventually turned off the movie, because I was like, a zombie can't talk. I think that is literally the final straw for me as a young kid.
Oh my God. Bub has always been the best. I love Bub.
He is. I love Bub. I love him now watching this.
That was your line in the sand.
I'm pretty sure it was.
No.
I was like,
unrealistic.
No. This is making me feel weird things, and Bub is talking. Done. I'm pretty sure that is what young, very overly dramatic Terry thought.
And he gets a gun. That's my. I didn't realize that the zombie got a gun, and I literally didn't think about this movie. He picks up a gun, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And then I did laugh at this part. That part I found silly. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's delightfully silly.
I was like, the zombie's got a fucking unloaded gun, and then points it at him and shoots, and they're like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "What is happening?"
It's my favorite. I don't know.
Sherman Howard's performance, though, as Bub, is fantastic. When they turn on the music and he's like, his eyes go wide, it's like you could like see him like processing things in real time, and it's such a great performance with very little vocal. It's so physical, but it's such a, I don't know, he's really good. It's one of my favorite things about the movie as an adult.
Same.
Well, and his performance like really begs that question, like, are they human, and like what are we doing to these zombies, and like what do we consider them, like species, like I don't know, classification wise. And you have Bub, who's just like, maybe we are wrong about some things here, and like that is fascinating.
It set me down this weird path where I was like, okay, is there intelligence there, or is he like, like a dog or like an animal that can be trained for tricks? And if that's the case, and this movie is positing that there really isn't a line between humans and them, are we the same? Because everyone is talking about how like the only thing that is keeping civility alive is this promise of some great after. Is this movie saying that like we, instead of our zombies like us, are we actually like zombies? And that was like this sort of dark, and that ending note of like her going back through it and making the calendars and going through the same motions that she went before, was like, oh, is the film actually asking, are we zombies, as opposed to are zombies us?
Which I think is also what makes it depressingly relevant to like right now, because right now we're living through like, the climate apocalypse. We're living through now one pandemic, and now a second one, monkeypox, starting to happen. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, we have the rise of Christian fascism. Mm-hmm. And we're all just expected to kind of pretend like shit's okay. And I have friends who are like having destination weddings and like, we're still going to promote, this thing, and make sure to come into the office on time. Otherwise, we're going to dock you. And it's just like, I mean, the government is starting to treat my existence as a culture war. Can I have at least a 4-day weekend? Like,
right.
It's sort of that. It's that. And I didn't think of that until you just mentioned that, Terry. Like, it's almost like this movie's self-fulfilling prophecy.
A case can be made that we're going through the motions now, and yet we are living in the same kind of situation that they are in this movie. You could make that case.
I might have a panic attack about this later.
I do think this movie is surprisingly deep.
I'm not even joking.
I'm sorry.
Just like...
Oh, I mean, after I watched it today, I had to have a palate cleanser. I like put on some Ratatouille, and I was just like, because I needed to get it, because I was getting a little activated watching it, and I will in my last hour or two before I have my little grandma sleep. Gonna probably have to look at something bright and colorful and safe. On a somewhat less bleak note, I guess I could say that we're saying, oh, there's no unlikable in this movie, and now we're talking about Bub. And I would say Bub is the one person that is nice in the movie.
Bub is okay.
Bub is good.
Bub is the one.
Because, and I wrote a note here too that what I love most about Bub, what you were saying, Terry, like what's so great is that it's a nonverbal performance mostly, and like how much he does. Bub's character and the way that he expresses this character is like it's very mood reactive. So it's like very chill and calm when it's like Logan, when it's Sarah, whatever. And then as soon as like any of the military guys come near, and then it's immediate agitation.
Yep.
And I think that it's just I don't know. I just found it fascinating. I don't know if I have anything to say to that point. I'd never noticed that before. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the vibes, it's all about the vibes of the room.
Yeah. All about the vibes of the room.
The vibes were off for Bub, so then he got a gun.
And then he got a gun.
And he took things into his own hands. I want to know what Bub's up to.
What happened to Bub?
Yeah, like I want to see. Here's the thing. Here's my thing about Day of the Dead is you never see the day-to-day. I want to see more of like, what are these people doing to pass the time? I also want to know what's going on with Bub now? Is he like decaying somewhere? Has he like found some other friends that he can like, hey, do you also recognize Beethoven's Ninth? Do you also light up in your eyes like as some kind of partial recognition? Is he like having some kind of like re-education camp for zombies? Or is he just kind of like, did he also get to that island at the end? Wouldn't that be so cute? Like it just pans over slightly at the end and he's just like...
he's in like a straw hat.
He's like in a straw hat.
Like his little pail of organs.
It's just like the end of Aliens where like the queen just suddenly appears, somehow had ridden on the fucking spaceship. Like at the end he just like hung on to the helicopter and was just like, no, take me with you.
Take me to safety.
I want to listen to music.
He's eating body part smoothies and lounging on the beach.
I feel like Fido is a very interesting... Have you guys seen Fido?
I have not, but I know all about it.
Once.
Yeah, Fido is a very interesting... Like, just thinking about Bub and like the character of Fido in that it's a horror comedy where zombies can be controlled to be like house pets and stuff like that. And that I feel like this is a very interesting companion to that, just because it's... I get Bub vibes from our main guy. And so it's very interesting. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember really liking it when I saw it a long time ago.
Yeah, I watched that at the same
Carrie-Anne
time
Moss, aka Trinity.
Oh, that's right.
Is the mom. And
she
I think falls in love with the zombie, or like they have a very cute dance scene at one point. It's very good.
She has a random career.
She really does.
She truly does. She's also the mom in Disturbia?
Yeah.
What the fuck? I feel like her career is unworthy of her. I don't understand.
I agree.
What I ever think about whenever I see Fido is that I watched it around the same time as I watched Otto, and I always get the two confused. Otto was a Bruce the Bruce film about porn and zombies, and I mean it's a Bruce the Bruce film. Are we bridging our
conversations?
It's all coming back together.
Terry, you planned this, didn't you? Bravo.
Bravo. Did not.
Well played, old chap.
King of
That was a very good little twist ending. I mean, holy crap.
It totally was purposeful.
Are you M. Night Shyamalan? Because I am blown away by that twist.
Whoa.
Lord have mercy.
On that incredible note, do we want to give this our rating out of 5?
We need to end it there.
All right, Terry, how many zombies got a gun out of 5 do you give Day of the Dead?
Zombies got a gun. So run away. Anyway, here's the thing. I think this movie is an exceptionally well-made film. I think that what it sets out to do what it wants to do, and it does it with ruthless efficiency. I think if you were to look at it as purely that, it is in some ways, I think this is the perfect zombie movie. I really do. Much more so than Romero's other work. Because it distills everything that we've been doing in zombie movies for the last however many years in a very bleak, I would argue deep movie that has like a lot of not just subtext, but actual text that is interesting. I mean, we just had like a really long conversation about all the different ways and all the different themes that this movie brings up that are unfortunately still relevant to today. So in that regard, I cannot give this anything less than 4.5 zombies got a gun. However, that said, I hate this movie and I never want to watch it again.
Yes.
So that's my score. What about you, Mary Beth?
It's the exact same thing. 4.5. It is a movie that I do not. Maybe I'll watch it one more time, but like it is not a pleasant experience. And again, like wasn't expecting that to be such an unpleasant experience. I think because I have this attitude about zombie movies being kind of like inherently silly in some parts of it. Like I know that obviously a lot of them are bleak, but there's some comedy to it. This one was just like, oh God. Like it really just kind of, it's like a dark cloud over your day a little bit after you watched it, which I like. And again, like I watch a lot of movies like that, and I just was not expecting it from this one. So it kind of blindsided me. And then this conversation that we're having has just made me be like, ugh, incredible work. So happy it exists. And I never want to engage with it. Well, I'll engage with it, but I never want to like experience it again, or at least for a very long time. Cressa, you have the final word. How many zombies got a gun out of 5 do you give David?
So I agree with both of you enthusiastically for all of the same reasons. Like I said, I don't think I've ever enjoyed viewing this movie as one would normally enjoy a movie experience. And I, like I said, I have my opinions both personally and critically about movies where violence is the central theme and gore is the spectacle, blah, blah, blah. That all being said, because this does have such a relevance to just my personal life and the fact that on rewatching it and now discussing it with you both, like finding all of these strangely timely all these things about it that make it relevant to today, probably more so than when I first saw it or when I saw it even in my like teens and 20s, I have to give it a 5. Both for personal reasons and for just, analytical reasons. Like, when I was watching this movie growing up, I don't think it had the same relevancy for me. And now it freakishly does, more so. And I agree with you, Terry. I don't think there is a better, of the genre, this is probably it. This is like the best way it can be done because it simply removes your enjoyment from the equation. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of other movies I've had that reaction to. I want to say recently, a few years ago, I saw Climax, and I hate Gaspar Noé, and I hated that experience. I actually had a very bad physical reaction to it. However, I walked away from it saying, that was, for what it did, incredible. It is still like I abhor it with all of my soul and being and whatever. But by the same token, it, for what it set out to do, it did it magnificently. So for going out to be an absolutely feel-bad, bleak mirror to society, that's also just the most realistically violently gory nightmare-inducing thing ever. It's like, bravo, you fucking did it, man. You made me feel more depressed than I already was.
Seriously.
Thanks a fucking lot.
Yeah.
I do wonder, because I feel like we're all three very empathetic people, and I do wonder, because this movie has no empathy whatsoever for anything, I do wonder if that might be why we have such a visceral reaction to it, because it's devoid of it. I think
you're right.
It's devoid of it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Ugh. Yeah, there are certain kinds of people who probably who I've been in that crowd when I went to go see Tom Savini. I saw those like gore hounds, and was like, ugh. And yeah, I think it's like if you do care about like empathy, if you care about other people, this is a movie that will make you feel very shitty.
Yes.
If you wish to experience joy in life. This is not the movie for you.
Not the movie, no.
You know, and sometimes, you know, like I don't watch a lot of horror because I don't want to feel any worse about life, you know, because it's like you said, Mary Beth, like it's so nihilistic. It's like kind of hard to do a movie that's that nihilistic, and like, because the world feels like that. So, however, if you are going to do something nihilistic, I highly recommend Day of the Dead.
There you go. And that is the perfect note to end on. So thank you so much, Cressa, for bringing this horrendously terrifying and very upsetting movie for us. This was a great conversation, so thank you so much.
This was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Where can our listeners find you? And do you have anything coming up that you can share?
You can find me on most social media as Beeragon, which is my name, but riffing on Baragon, the monster from Godzilla movies. And do I have anything coming up? I feel like I have that very Aries problem where I have like 20 things started. I don't know which of them is gonna finally land. I would love to say something really cool. I was even thinking today, like, they're going to ask you to promote something. And I'm like, I'm prepping really cool shit. I just don't know when it's going to land. I have like a bunch of things in various stages of pre-production that kind of run the gamut of being similar to what I do now and very different.
Ooh.
We will see.
Well, everyone just follow Cressa to check in on any and everything.
Find out what that means. Her ambiguity is her promotional material.
You'll have to follow me to find out what's coming up next.
Do you like vague references to future events? Boy, do I have the artist for you.
So, listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. How depressed were you after watching Day of the Dead? Let us know through email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or let us know on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, follow the podcast at Scarred Podcast on Twitter.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.